guys, it's Elise back with more pre-filming. I assume if you guys clicked on this video entitled 3 Really Gay Books I'd Die For, you assumed that I would be here with 3 really gay books I'd die for. And I am. The common thread I kind of chose for today is that they're not set in the present day. All 3 of these are either historical fiction or one of them sort of set in an ambiguous time, but not in our present world. And I just love all 3 of these books. They're 3 of my favorite books of the year, and well, 2 of them are favorite books of last year, and I just wanted to talk about them. The first book on my list is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I've talked about this book, God, like 1,000 fucking times, but it is a historical gay rom-com. I know that sounds absurd, but that is literally what this book is. It is a book about a bisexual heir who is going around on his journey of the continent, his tour of the continent, with his best friend Percy and his sister Felicity. And along the way, he sort of gets separated from the person who's supposed to be running this guide, along with Percy and Felicity, and they get into some trouble. It is spectacular in every way. So first of all, this is a very long book. It is about 500 pages, and I read it in 24 hours. Less than 24 hours. This is a hilarious book, but it also has some really important messaging in it, which is sort of something I'm very into. I really like funny books with important messages. It is an unabashed rom-com about 2 boys who are best friends since childhood, but maybe there's something more. And it's just, it really meant a lot to me to see this romance between 2 boys back in history who get to, you know, be together. And it's not just a sad book. A lot of historical fiction and even present day fiction starring gay protagonists is really, really sad. Or even if it's not really, really sad at the end, the entire journey is really, really sad. And this is not. This is super, super happy. Here's the other thing, which I think has not been talked about nearly as much as it deserves. This is a book that is, in a lot of ways, subverting the cure narrative, or the narrative of someone needing to be cured of a chronic illness to be worthy of love. One of the main characters of this book is epileptic and suffers from seizures, which obviously they don't use that term in the book, but it's a really big part of the narrative where the other main characters are trying to cure him, and he doesn't necessarily want to be cured. He just wants to be loved how he is, which a lot of people in his life haven't done. This book meant a lot to me. It is very funny. It is also very emotional. I cried at the ending, kind of a lot. It meant so much to me. I would reread this so many times. I've already reread it once. I expect to reread it a lot more. The next book on this list, and the first book that I read this year, is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a weird book because it didn't really get a lot of hype at the beginning, and now it's getting a lot of hype. At some point, I think the word got out that this is actually about a bisexual Cuban woman, which is not something that's stated in the blurb, and this is a book about a woman named Evelyn Hugo dictating her final memoir, essentially, to an obscure woman reporter. One of the things that she says she's going to come out with is who the actual love of her life was, because she had 7 husbands. But it turns out that the love of her life was not any one of the 7 husbands. It was her, best friend, Celia St. James. They're torn apart by homophobia in a lot of ways, but they also keep looking for each other and keep coming back together. It is the most romantic thing ever. I love them so much. I would die for them. Oh my god. I would argue that the fact that she's, you know, in love with a woman isn't a plot twist. I think a lot of people have actually said that. You find that on like page 100. It's not a plot twist. There's a lot of discussion of racism and homophobia in the film industry because it is told by an actress, well, a former actress. This is not a happy book. It's, you know, there are a lot of happy moments to it, and in the end I think it was more emotionally cathartic than sad, but It is not necessarily the happiest of books. You should be aware of that going in. I love this book so much. It made me cry so hard. There's this one plot twist in it that I did not see coming at all. There is this great friendship between Henry, who is one of her husbands actually, who's gay, and then Evelyn, obviously, who's bi. And they have this great dynamic where they have no romantic attraction whatsoever between them, but they're just really good bros, and it's amazing. It was perfect. This was everything I ever wanted. Absolutely adore. And the third and final book, which you probably have heard me mention before because I talk about it constantly, is Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore. I had read one Anna Marie McLemore book last year called The Weight of Feathers, and I'd met her, and she was so sweet, and I'd talked to her, and I really liked Weight of Feathers. It was, 4 stars, very Romeo and Juliet-esque, very fun. And then I hadn't read When the Moon Was Ours yet, which is her more popular one, but I had the opportunity to read an early copy of this, and it had such a beautiful cover and it had a really cool premise. It's 5 girls and they're all in love with the same girl. And it was insanely good, first of all. Gorgeous cover, gorgeous writing. The writing is unparalleled. It is magical realism. I don't know what to say about this. That's not a spoiler. Estrella, the main character, has this arc around her own self-hatred and kind of feeling that she doesn't deserve anything that I would die for. All of these sisters have sort of a power where they can make flowers grow out of their hands, and Estrella really struggles with her gift because she is forced into growing flowers out of her hands. She feels that she's almost an out-of-control monster, like she has this feeling about her. And it's really interwoven into the narrative in this gorgeous way where it's a little bit subtle, but you end up really connecting to her as a character and just empathizing with her so much. Estrella is one of my favorite lead characters of all the books I read last year, and she means a lot to me. A lot of this book, and this shouldn't be a spoiler, I'm trying to be so vague, I'm so sorry, is about colonialism. And the villain of this book is essentially rich white men. That's not explicit, but it is a book about a bunch of queer Latina sisters who are going in against a white man who is trying to appropriate and profit off them, essentially. So, there's more about that later on, and you really figure out, it is very explicitly about colonialism later on, but you find that out more as the book goes on. So we're just gonna leave it there for now. What else to say about this book? Oh, another major theme, learning that the people you love are not always going to be who you initially thought them to be. So the 5 sisters who are in love with the same girl is named Bae, and she is a very major side character in this book. And as the book goes on, you find out that she's not really what they might have initially thought about her, and the narrative really emphasizes that, and emphasizes that when she finally falls in love with one of the sisters.
That's kind of a spoiler.
The book is very explicit that the reason she fell in love with this sister is because this sister recognized her for who she is rather than who they wanted her to be. She is also genderqueer, which is very explicit within the narrative. Oh god, there's also this adorable romance between Estrella and this boy who kind of pops out of the garden, and his name is Fel, and oh my god, they're so good. They're so good. Fel is such a good character. They're both so good for each other. I cry sometimes.
Yeah. Anyway.
I think the first 75% I was enjoying it a lot. I really connected to Estrella. The writing's gorgeous, but it took me a month to get through because I was just going very slowly along, plotting a little bit. And then I got to the end, and I binge read the last 25% in one night, and I think I started crying around the 75% mark. And then I didn't stop crying until I got to the end of the book, and that was an hour-long period. I was just in bed crying over nothing. And it was an experience.
This is not a book, this is an experience.
It is so gorgeous. Everything about it is perfect. Somehow manages to be a very dark book, but also the epitome of love and light. And it is super queer. The author is an absolute sweetheart. I have met Anna Marie McLemore now twice. She is the nicest person in the entire world. She actually follows me on Twitter. It's so good. And I've tweeted her like a million billion times about this fucking book because it's my favorite book I read last year out of 250 books I read. It is amazing. Thank you for viewing my video about a bunch of queer books that I really, really like. All of these are set a little bit in the past, and they're all very, very, very different books. I hope you guys can all find a new favorite in there. It'll really depend on what you like. If you really like light stuff, you might want to read Gentleman's Guide, although there is a lot of darkness to it. If you like kind of magical realism, you don't really know what's going on, but also it's really sad stuff, you should definitely read Wild Beauty. If you like to be sad, but also be scared out of your mind and binge read stuff, you should definitely read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. If you like to be sad, but you also really, really like to be fucked up by plot twists and binge read something in one night because you have to find out what happens, kind of reads like a thriller, you should definitely read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Thank you for listening to me talk about them, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!